Okay, in this video, we will write a script in the Python scripting language that will scrape the data we want off of a Yahoo Finance web page for the stocks that we want. In order to successfully write this script, you will need to have a CSV file of just the tickers of the stocks you want and Python installed in your machine, Python 2.7. Okay, so let's create our CSV file and open it in a text editor. If you don't have a text editor, you can just use Notepad. And we're just going to put in some example stocks here. So Amazon, Google, and Apple. Go back to our terminal. Oops. Go back to our terminal and then create our scripting file. And make sure that the file that you create has py as the file suffix, as this indicates a Python file. Okay, so once we've made our file, we need to install and import the dependencies for our script. You have to install urllib2, Beautiful Soup, XLSX Writer, PhantomJS, and Selenium. I've already installed these dependencies on my machine, so I'm just going to import them. But if you need to install, you can use Homebrew or pip to install these packages on your machine. So let's import OS, sys, CSV, which we're going to need to read our CSV file. Let's import Beautiful Soup, which is used to provide a scrapable object, a more easily scrapable object from the web page we return. Import urllib2, which is necessary to make GET requests for the web page. Import XLSX Writer, and import WebDriver from Selenium. Okay, after we've done this, we are going to need to set the default encoding for this program to UTF-8. This is just so that our script can read everything inside the object that we return. Pretty standard. The next step is to create two lists. One which has the statistics we want to retrieve from the main summary page, and one which has the statistics we want from the statistics page, because Yahoo Finance has two areas where the stats are displayed. So we'll make key stats on main and key stats on stat. And inside these two arrays, you're going to write the statistics that ultimately you want this script to retrieve. So for key stats on main, just for example, we'll do market cap, price to earnings ratio, and earnings per share. Now it's necessary that you write it with that TTM in parentheses, because that's literally what our script is going to be looking for when it scrapes the page. So you have to write it exactly as I've done it here. And in our key stats on stat, we'll do enterprise value, trailing price to earnings, forward price to earnings, PEG ratio, 5 years expected, and yes, you do have to write it exactly like that. Return on assets, quarterly growth revenue, quarterly revenue growth, the EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, tax, deduction, and amortization, I think. Diluted EPS, total debt to equity, and current ratio. Okay, so with that done, we've got the statistics that we want our script to return in two different arrays. And we need to do this because there are two web pages that we're going to be scraping from YouTube. So we need to have two separate arrays. I'm just indicating there that you need to type it exactly as I've typed it, because those are that's the exact phrase that the script is going to look for and try to find on Yahoo's webpage. If it's written differently, you won't be able to find it. Okay. Now you just create an empty stocks array. And we are going to open up our CSV file. So we're going to name this object, or this thing, portfolio file, and it opens up our stocks file in read mode. Oh, and make sure that your CSV file is in the same folder as the script that we're working on. So if it's not in the same folder, it won't know where to find the CSV file. So make sure it's right next to your Python script. So now we're going to loop through the portfolio file, and that variable individual stock array is going to format each line so that it's clean, and it just returns the pure text for the stock ticker. And once it does that, it will append the stock ticker into our stocks array. So now our stocks array is just a list of all of the stock tickers from our CSV file, and we'll just print that out in the terminal just to double check to make sure nothing went wrong. Now we need to initialize our browser using browser equals webdriver.phantom.js. And what phantom.js allows us to do is to make GET requests on web pages without actually opening up a browser. So this is what's called a headless browser, and it allows us to get what we need without actually opening a browser. And initialize a stock info array variable, which will be used to store all the info on our stocks. Now this is the big part of the script. We're going to loop through our stocks array. The first thing that we need to do is create an array that's going to store our stock information for the particular stock in question. So we call that stock info. And then we make sure that the first element of the stock info array is the name of our stock. So ticker equals stock at 0 index means in this case ticker will be the stock ticker, so like AMZN or AAPL. Now we need to define our URLs, which we'll type out here. And what you see there with the zeros inside the curly braces is Python's way of doing string interpolation, which is a fancy way of saying inserting the value of a variable into a string. So we want to insert our ticker, which is in this case, I think, AMZN, into the URL. And wherever you see a 0 in a curly brace, that's where the ticker will be inserted. So now we're going to make our second URL, which is going to be for the key statistics page of our stock. The first URL is for the summary page of our stock. Now we are going to use our browser to make a GET request. And now we are going to execute a script which returns all of the text of the web page from that GET request. And we'll call that inner HTML. Now using the beautiful soup library, we will turn our inner HTML into a soup object, which will just make it much easier to read and easier to access when we're scraping. So now we're going to start a loop, looping through our key stats on main array. So here's where we're going to start scraping and looking for the statistics on the web page. This line of text finds the phrase market cap. Since market cap is at the 0 index of our key stats on main array, it's going to find the location of that value in our beautiful soup object. And then using try, we are going to locate the parent element of page stat 1 in our soup object. Now page stat num1 is going to be the answer to the statistic we want. So it's going to be the actual numerical value that we're looking for. Now we write a couple of different methods for this because depending on the stock, sometimes the page renders differently, and in the case that it does render differently, you have to have a couple different methods to actually find the statistic that we're looking for. So in that try, it's under a span tag, and in the except, it's just under a table data tag. And in this except refers to the earlier try, which essentially means that some of the stocks that we're looking for won't have the statistic that we're looking for. So in that case, we'll just assign it with a not applicable string and carry on like that. Okay, so now we've written the scraping part for our first set of statistics that we want to return. So now we add the statistic that we've just scraped into our stock info array. And so this code here will iterate through the whole key stats on main array and grab all the relevant statistics that we're looking for. So now we're going to make a very similar block of code for the key stats on stat array. And this chunk of code will essentially accomplish everything that the previous chunk of code did, except for the key statistics section of the stock in question. So we'll do the same thing, browser.getURL2, which makes a GET request, and then inner HTML2 will return the text of that GET request, and then soup2 turns that text into a more easily navigable, beautiful soup object. Okay, so we've got that set up. And then we just go into this loop, and we essentially just do the same thing. So you can see everything that we're doing is not much different. We're just using different variable names in this case, but it achieves the same end that the previous loop achieves. Okay, and then we'll add in our exception, which will give us a little error message to let us know that it couldn't find the statistic that we wanted. Okay, and then we will take the data that we've scraped and nudge it into our stock info array. And so once that's been done for all of the statistics in both of our statistic arrays, then we will shovel that whole array of statistics into our stock info array, or our master array, which will contain all the information about all the stocks. So stock info is an array that has all the information of one stock, and then we shovel that into stock info array, which ultimately will have all the information about all the stocks. Okay. So we're almost done. Okay. So once we've done that, we can print out our stock info array, our master array, just to make sure that everything went according to plan. Now that we've successfully scraped, there just is one thing left to do, which is to write the results of our scraping into an Excel file. So this is where the dependency XLSX writer comes in handy. Also, before we go any further, we want to combine those two arrays, keystats on main and keystats on stat, into a single array. This will make it simpler to prepare our environment in our Excel file. So using these XLSX writer methods, we will create a workbook, and the argument of this function just is the name of the file that you want. So I've just decided to name the file stocks01. You can name it whatever you want to. And with this, we will open up a worksheet inside the workbook. And now we are ready to start working and writing into the Excel file. So the first thing you want to do is initialize your variables before we start writing, because those will serve as the coordinates of the Excel cells. Okay, so now we're going to loop through this new unified array. So remember that this array contains all of the statistics that we want, not just the ones available on the summary page of Yahoo Finance. Okay, so now we're going to write in the stat at the coordinate of row and column. And what this loop accomplishes is it just defines the columns that we're going to write all our statistics under. So at the top, all the columns will be market cap, trailing price to earnings, and so on. Okay, now before we start looping again, we want to reset our variables. And now we're going to loop through the stock info array, a master array. So at each time, we're going to set column to 0. And now we're going to make a loop inside of a loop. And what this loop inside the loop does is it writes out all the statistics for a particular stock. And that column +1 nudges the cell over to the right every time. And so we want to write row +=1 there to nudge the cell down one space once we move on to the next stock. Okay, and then just close your workbook after that's done, and the stock should be working for you. You should now have a fully functional script that scrapes statistics about your stocks and dumps them into an Excel file. Okay, so there is one problem here, but we can fix it. I realized the problem before I started making this video, and we're going to address it shortly. Okay, so the problem that we had was we wrote our URLs incorrectly. So what you want to do is just go back to the URLs and write in a / after quote in each of the URLs. And then once we've done that and saved our changes, we'll run the script again. And we'll wait for it to do its magic. It's taking a little while. Oh, okay, there it goes. So you can see the master array, which was just printed there in the terminal, and it shows that we got what we wanted. There's the Excel file, but we can open it up in Excel so we can look at it properly. So let's take a look at it. And there it is. So that's how it's done. Also, you can check out the repo on my GitHub in the link below.